Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're doing part 2 of a two-part series in which I show the same illustration drawn two drastically different ways. Now, last week I did this version of the illustration with lots of cute, happy, bright colors, and this week we are going to move down to this other section in which I draw it as gloomy and as dark and as gritty as possible. Now, I'm going to keep actually shifting this all the way up so that we're not distracted too much by those colors up there, even at the risk of revealing some of the marker testing that I had done down here. And I'm going to kind of tape this into place and begin by putting down a gray wash, sort of a gray watercolor diluted by quite a lot of water, and cover the entire area. That's going to have a sort of deadening effect on all the colors that come afterwards, and that's exactly what I want for this illustration. So just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and put down that gray wash. Okay, so I got this all covered now with one layer of gray wash, and I've let it dry. Very important to let it dry. And I should add that this is Bristol board, a thick kind of cardstock type paper that is strong enough to withstand a layer of wash like this. And now I'm going to go ahead and all in one go, just in time lapse, I'm going to put all of the basic pencil lines down. Then we'll come back and start to get into some of the details. Alright, well, we've got the basic guidelines in place, and I think you can already see that I have altered the look of this mermaid character a fair amount, and we're going to zoom in right now as I begin to refine the pencil lines further, get into more of the details of the environment. Alright, so you can see how the hair has been made sort of straighter to create these jagged lines at the end. Also, her eye expression has been made to look angrier or more devious, I guess we would say. And I've altered her costume a little bit as well. She had this very frilly sort of, what did I call it, the transition hider? Transition concealer as you change from fish to human. In any case, I've made this also have spikes, and the end of the tail also breaking more into spiky-like shapes, and I think that just sort of conveys the sort of dark, slightly repellent quality when you see spiky shapes. It's just less comfortable than when there are soft, welcoming sort of curving shapes. And so what I'm going to do now is begin to put in some of these basic guidelines, and I haven't mentioned in this video, but just in case someone's watching this one who didn't watch the other one, I do have a complete step-by-step how to draw a mermaid video that goes into considerably more detail. This I just sort of time-lapsed through all of this, but happily, if you want to learn how to draw a mermaid, though not an evil-looking one like this one, more of a friendly-looking one, I do have a separate video that goes through that in step-by-step, and I'll put a link in the info box. And that one actually goes through this whole process of laying in the scales. But one thing that I'm going to do is, instead of making them curving scales, I'm going to make them, again, spiky scales. Spiky is the word of the day, I guess, with this one, and that immediately makes her look a little more dragon-like or snake-like. In any case, I don't need to do this all real time. I can do that later on. You get the idea. But you saw how I laid in these sort of diagonal guidelines that help me place these individual scales. So what I want to do now is, let's move on to drawing the treasure chest. One major difference, instead of treasure, which just doesn't seem evil enough for me, I am going to put inside this treasure chest the great orb of power. Isn't there always some sort of orb of power that these deadly villains want to get hold of? Now nothing will be able to stop me from being Empress of the Sea. In any case, I'm going to put this sort of orb in here and later on get into some lighting effects, maybe give this a greenish glow, and that will allow her to be lit from beneath, which we all know is the sure sign that someone is evil when they're being lit from beneath, even if it's just a flashlight. Someone looks more evil when the lighting source comes from below. So I thought that would be fun as one of the big differences. And really, one of the key differences is going to be this whole surface of the ocean floor, which I, of course, did coral. You can still see a little hint of it here at the top of the screen last week. This time we are indeed going to sort of change this into skulls, which I kind of predicted. I got to be careful because I don't want to make a skull that's too much bigger than her head, or else that doesn't agree, right? Unless she's in the land of giant people who passed away, fell down to the bottom of the ocean. But I thought I would show that in contrast to last week's video, I am going to actually, get some of the details in place prior. Last time I was just sort of carving out these vague shapes and then figuring out the details later. This time, because of this idea of bones, I don't think I can get away with just vague shapes. I do have to sort of figure out what it is that I'm going to put where. So let's say I decide that a rib cage is visible over here. Then I would want to go ahead and get guidelines in place with the pencil rather than try to just wing that with color. I think you do sort of with a more detailed surface that's made up of lots of different components like this one. It probably does require planning it all out in advance with the pencil. And yeah, maybe that gives you as much as you need to know about this preparatory work. Let me go ahead and finish off the line work of the bones and so forth in time-lapse, and then maybe we can start to gradually get into the color. Okay, well, I have the preparatory lines in place, and now I'm going to start adding color, mainly by way of watercolor. I last week talked about how watercolor sort of lends itself to a certain texture. I mean, it's possible some people who are very skilled at it can use watercolor in a super smooth way. I definitely can't, and it ends up being a little sort of mottled, splotchy, but in this case that's going to work in my favor because I want this, like I said, I want this version to be a little grittier, have a little more texture to it. So rather than using marker, certainly for this lower section of the sort of sea of bones or whatever this is, I am going to be using quite a lot of this sort of dark grayish purplish color. Now in my video about color choices, I did talk about the difference between warm colors and cool colors. I think definitely we want cold colors for this version of the illustration. Not that last week's version was all that warm, actually. They are sort of, I used a lot of pastel-y colors that were not super warm, but they were very sort of spring-like, I guess I would say. I kept saying like candy colored. This time definitely not going to have any colors like that. The goal is to make every single one of these colors sort of gloomy, depressing looking. Now you see me going back into the section that I just worked on, while it's sort of semi-dry, and actually actively making it less even, adding little dots here and there. I knew that watercolor would be the perfect coloring medium for this area. It just allows you to keep playing around with it, sort of enjoy the lack of consistency. I think when I'm using markers, I feel like I'm striving to eliminate those streaky areas, whereas when I'm using watercolors, I mean, it depends on what it is I'm trying to do, but a lot of times with watercolors, I'm just embracing the splotchiness and letting watercolor do what it does best, which is to be kind of organic, not so smooth, not so, untouched by human hands. So I think you get the basic idea of how I'm approaching this. Let me go ahead and finish off this sort of single layer that I'm working on right now of dark purplish gray, and then maybe we can come back and start working, well, I'll probably start refining the sea bed a little further with colored pencil. Alright, so I've got that sort of first layer in there that I suppose depicts the seabed itself, which this time is definitely not coral, looking like some sort of volcanic rock or something like that. And I'm going in with my trusty black Prismacolor and just beginning to refine things a little bit. I must say, doing this kind of work for me is quite pleasant because I feel like I can be a little loose. I can sort of play around a bit, and no individual line matters all that much. You're sort of going for an eventual effect of the illusion of loads and loads of detail that you are not actually necessarily focusing on. You're just sort of suggesting. It's kind of impressionistic. You're suggesting all these different pieces of bone and so forth without actually troubling yourself too much with, well, which bone is that? Is it the clavicle? I'm certainly not concerning myself too much with that kind of thing. Just you can see the Prismacolor just sort of dancing around and dropping in little bits, and your eye is constantly checking to see what is the overall effect that I'm getting here. Do I need a little more darkness here, over there? So in any case, you can see that my process, well, this time was to begin with a gray wash, which really tied the entire picture together into this desaturated grayness. And now, having got a second little bit of watercolor in there, I go in and tighten things up with the color pencil. But I don't think I'm completely done with the watercolor. I feel like I'm probably going to go back in there and get a bit more watercolor work done. And often I find myself trading back and forth. Now, one thing that I'm not doing at this stage is doing super dark outlines, as I did last week, and this will be one of the rare similarities. I'm going to save the really bold black outlines for the character, so that she still pops out and remains the focal point. So you can see me sort of getting into a line-ish outlines here without really going bold and dark. The idea being to save the bold outlines for that character later on. Well, I think I've given about as much advice as I can on this bit. Let me go ahead and finish off really all across the bottom here, whether you can see it or not, left to right, this little process with the black Prismacolor, and then we can maybe move on to that ship there in the background. Alright, so I'm moving on to the watercolor that I'm going to use for the ship, and I've decided actually, instead of just keeping it gray, to go a little bit to the color blue. My thinking is that, yes, I do want this illustration to be gloomy, but I don't want it to be entirely monochromatic, and so I am actually going to introduce a little bit of cool blue to the composition here, almost only for variety's sake. And as with last week, I am trying to keep this part of the illustration dropping back and not popping out towards us, and so I will not be outlining it very much. In fact, I think the pencil is probably a little darker this time. I must have gone in a little too dark with the pencil. Preparatory work may be possible to lighten that up. Lighten up, will you, Crilly? And so I'm going to just keep adding the blue here throughout. Why don't I just go ahead and kick it into time-lapse? I don't think there's so much more I need to say about this, but I guess suffice to say that I'm only going to use blue in this area, no other colors, which I observed in photographs, actually, of undersea photography. When things were very far in the distance, it really did. You didn't see a whole bunch of different colors. It all became one color. So let's go ahead and finish this part of it up. Alright, well, I'm going to come in here now and add these lines with a blue colored pencil, the lines of the rigging. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, this is essentially the same ship as I did last week, with the key difference of having added damage where it was brought down, either by cannon fire or by the evil mermaid herself. Who knows what weaponry she possesses to bring down ships like this. In any case, having finished this bit up, I am going to move over to do the treasure chest, which really should be fairly different from what we did last time, because it was all about gold coins and so forth. This time it's going to be about this orb of power, which is going to hopefully allow me to teach a little bit about lighting effects. So I'll go ahead and finish this up, and then we will shift focus and move on to the treasure chest. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is actually use just plain water to try to remove some of the gray. You know, way back at the beginning we just covered the entire area with gray. I'm going to try to just add a little bit of water here. And you can see it's already starting to loosen up that color. And now by dabbing away with some tissue, we can get pretty close to removing all of that and getting back to the white of the page. And I'm sort of doing that first to remind myself that this time it's going to be all about the orb of power, which is producing this glowing light, and that's going to of course affect the way that I color the rest of the interior, and so to a certain degree it will also affect the way I color her later on. So hang on a second, I'm going to mix up a little bit of brown watercolor to do the exterior of the treasure chest. Alright, so last time I used a brown marker that was really leaning towards orange. This time I am going for a much more dingy looking brown, sort of brown mixed with black. I do feel like this needs to be quite dark to accentuate the idea of this glowing orb. So in a way, I'm sort of dropping in extra paint to get this as dark as possible, and hopefully not have to go back in there later on to darken it up. Although I got to make sure it still reads as brown, at least a little. I don't want it to blend into the gray, sort of lava rock background. Some of the stuff, unfortunately, some of the subtleties of these colors don't pick up so well on video, sad to say. So my apologies if this looks like mostly the same color to you. You know, compared to that backdrop color, it is supposed to be a sort of a brown. And I guess this front area also can be safely darkened in, since the light would not be getting to that area as well. Now these other bits, the interior sections, are going to be receiving some light from that orb. So I think maybe the first thing I need to do is make some decisions about the light. I know that I said it was going to be sort of a greenish glow, and I think I do want to stick with that. So as I think it through, I'm thinking my tool of choice for the green glow is going to be a colored pencil. I think that allows me control and a sort of a blurring effect. So let me go find a good green colored pencil. So I have found a sort of yellowish green here. My idea being, let's go for a sort of slightly sickish looking green. You certainly don't want to, I don't want any pretty colors in this one, you know, so I'm going for this, I don't know what it is about this shade of green that makes me feel it's a little bit unhealthy almost. So you can see the benefit of switching to colored pencil is that by letting up on it I can have a real gradual fade, which is what I want for this effect of the orb of power. Almost an airbrushy kind of a feeling that you can achieve with colored pencils. And, you know, if you've learned nothing else from watching this series of videos, it's that I choose my coloring material based on the effect that I'm trying to achieve. And I don't want to say that everyone should work this way. If you are able to achieve all the different effects you want with a single medium, that's great. In fact, it's arguably better than what I do. But for better or for worse, I've developed this method of mixing different media for achieving different effects. And that's what I have to pass on to people watching my videos. This is the way I work. And it's what I have to offer, basically, as a colorist. Now I'm going in on top of this with a slightly more cheerful shade of green, just to sort of darken it a little more. But we certainly don't want the appearance of an outline here. I'm just sort of deepening the exterior edge, and hopefully you're already starting to get this effect of the glow, you know, sort of the white is of course the brightest color that you can get in there, so you just want to leave that, although I may drop in a little gouache. You all know I love the gouache at the end, but for now I'm just leaving that area blank and just deepening things a little bit. Why did they put the Orb of Power in a treasure chest? Not really sure. I didn't really work on the backstory for this one, folks. Sorry about that. But anyway, now maybe we can get on to the next part of coloring the interior to sort of reflect this glowing light source. So I've switched back to a brown watercolor here, and knowing what I know about light and the way it behaves, I am assuming that not very much of that glowing light is going to reach this little area here because of the curving inside top. It should remain a little bit dark down there and then gradually get lighter as it goes up. And I'm sort of pulling with my brush the dark paint down towards that lower edge, and hopefully you're already starting to get that effect. Now, I am not going to try to achieve all of this by way of watercolor. I'm going to try to, again, blend different things. Probably mostly watercolor and colored pencil to achieve this glowing effect. But I wanted to get at least the beginnings of it in with the watercolor. This is especially this lower section down here. And I think I am going to maybe let you see as I take my tissue here. Sorry, the shadow is probably getting in the way. And dab away just a little bit in this area where I want it to fade. Sometimes you need a little help when it's going darker than you want it to. So maybe it's just as well that you saw that. As a technique, sometimes you do have to go in and wash a little bit of it away to get that gradient sort of fade that you want. Well, I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and finish off the rest of this treasure chest with colored pencils. Alright, well, let's see if I can pull this off. My theory is that we want this to look like it's being sort of discolored by the green light. But I want it to be dark in this area so that it's not competing with that glowing white inside. So I'm actually going to go in here with some green, and I may have to backpedal a little and mix this with brown or something, but I thought I would at least attempt this effect of the inside of the treasure chest being almost painted green by the glow of this light. As you know, you often see when you switch on a red light or a blue light. For Halloween, everything suddenly takes on that color. So I thought, let's try and see if we can go for that effect. And it seems to be working. Although I think for this upper area, instead of this dark green, I'm going to switch back to this lighter yellowy green and see if that works. It's tricky because I want to show the green light affecting this, but I don't want it to get too dark or else I lose my effect of this sort of reflected light. So, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but the nice thing about colored pencils is you can erase away later on. Let's see if I can grab, I'm going to grab a brown colored pencil to begin refining this upper area here. Alright, so I've grabbed quite a dark shade of brown here to sort of beef up this gradient thing that I was going for. And I do think that even this area over here on the side, the interior side, would also get a little bit of a gradient shadow. And then I'm going to use the brown just for firming up these lines that are meant to be the interior structure. And it seems to me this upper edge is going to have to get all darkened in, because no light would actually reach that upper edge, I don't think, from where the orb appears to be. So I ended up spending more time on this bit than I anticipated, but in a way I'm glad, because I didn't want these two videos to be too similar in terms of what they were teaching. Last time it was all about gold coins and so forth, and this time we're doing something different with this orb of power. Even though we don't quite know what the power is. Isn't it always just like some vague power to destroy my enemies? We can't let her get the orb of power. The seas will be in peril. Well, you get the idea of how I'm going to do this. I am actually going to go in. Where's my black Prismacolor? Hang on a second. I'm going to go ahead and add in just a little more structure here with the black Prismacolor. Then we can finally move on to coloring the mermaid herself. Why don't I'll just do the firming up lines with the black Prismacolor. I'm going to do all that in time lapse just to conserve time, and then we will just move on to the mermaid. Alright, well, I'm pulling out red watercolor paint to begin adding little touches of red throughout the illustration of our evil mermaid character. And this sort of harkens back to my video from a few weeks back where I talked about color choices, and the evil bad guy character then also was a combination of red and black. I think there is something about those two colors together that certainly can be used to create a certain bad guy feeling. So I'm going in and adding these first. Now, another thing that I said last week is that you're strategizing sometimes, especially when you're using watercolors and markers, tools like these. You're strategizing as to what order you do things in. Now, I've decided to have black be one of the big colors. And of course black, when you put it down first, if you try to add red next to black, it can very easily discolor. The darker color very often is better off being saved for last. So that's what I'm doing. I'm actually starting with the kind of trim colors, I guess you would call them. And what I want to do along here, and this should be fun, is to add a little bit of a pattern here. I better grab my tissue paper here to lighten up, because I did want her to appear to be a little bit illuminated. Now, I don't think I'm going to do too much in terms of making her look like she's catching green lighting. We'll see if I can pull off a little of that, but I don't want to confuse things too much by having these red highlights go green as they go closer to the orb. What is it about the word orb that makes me sort of laugh a little every time I say it? The orb of power. But you can see what I'm doing here. Let me go ahead and with time-lapse, just finish off adding the red trim. So, having got all that red in place, I can now go back in with black, and generally speaking, I shouldn't have any problem with the two colors mixing, just because the black will go right on top of the red and just doesn't tend to blur too much. In fact, just to demonstrate that, hang on a second, I don't want to stop doing the hair in an awkward place. But I did want to show you my little what I was saying there about how you have a better chance of doing it. If you do the red first and then you go on top with the black, you just get a nice crisp line there between the two colors, and it shouldn't give you any trouble. Whereas if I did the black first and I went in with the red, I think I might get a little blurring, unwanted blurring between the two. Alright, well, I'm sure this video is getting plenty long, and I know we went like over 30 minutes last week, so I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this in time-lapse, and then we'll be back to do some color pencil work. So, the next thing to do is to bring out the black Prismacolor and start doing the outlining, the details. I guess I'll go in and do her face, so you can see that part of it. And after this, of course, I'll pull out the gouache. Now, the thing I'm asking myself is, do I want to try to make it a greenish color? I think I probably won't. That sounds like overkill to me. If I were working on a larger scale, I think you can see from the size of my hand that both of these illustrations have been kind of small, so they could have been better if I had made the whole thing larger, but in a funny way it came down to being able to pull back at the end of this video to see both of them at the same time without you seeing the legs of my camera tripod, which is maybe just... Next time I'll just make it large and you will see those tripod legs, and who cares? But in any case, what was I going to say? Completely lost my train of thought. Crilly, you clearly need more coffee. But in any case, yeah, the precision on both of these illustrations has been compromised a little by working so small. Every once in a while you just have to work small, like if you're making a handmade card for somebody or something, so it's not a bad skill to develop. And if you can make something look good when it's pretty tiny, then it looks just that much better when you're allowed to make it really large and have it shrunk later on. So, how's that for recovering my train of thought? That was scary for a minute there, folks. My brain went completely blank. What am I going to do? They're counting on me to say something interesting. Well, I guess that means it's time for me to kick it into time-lapse. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then I will come back with the white gouache to do some final touches. Alright, so I kind of cheated and dashed in a little extra stuff that I'd forgotten, like the distant background and the bubbles that I needed to get there. But I'm going to the gouache now, and it's going to be a little different from what I did last time, because I do want to suggest the light source of the orb of power. My precious. And that means getting a decent amount of white highlight on all of these surfaces that are near to the orb. And it is going to hopefully create a little bit of that underlighting, although I don't think I'm going to try to go for the classic, you know, flashlight underneath your face kind of underlighting. But anyway, if I do my job right and get all of these highlights on the proper side of her body, they should begin to assist in this effect of the orb being the light source. And also, you may have noticed I'd added some shading on her skin on the opposite side where the light would not reach. So these things together are key to creating that illusion of light. Now, what I could have done, I suppose I could have mixed in a little bit of green and turned this into actual, green light. But I was a little afraid that would destroy the picture. I had just taken too big of a chance with that, so I decided to play it safe and go with the white highlight. But yeah, you could try experimenting with that idea of using I would make it a very pale, super pale white for the highlights, but you know, greenish white, just a tinge of the green that would be coming off of that globe. You certainly don't want to go in there with anything that's like a mid-tone, because then it's not going to read as a highlight at all. And that kind of brings us towards the end of things. Let me go ahead and use Old Man Time-Lapse, bring him out here in his submersible. Yes, I got down to the ocean floor to help you finish up the video. So I'm going to go ahead and speed through this last bit, and then we should be back with a few final words. All right, well, there you have it. Happy and cute and dark and gloomy. Together at last. And let me know what you thought about this little series of videos. I had a lot of fun doing it, and if folks like it, I certainly can find new interpretations, new ways of doing it in the future. But for now, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books, like Miki Falls and Brody's Ghost, my 2 graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2, my How to Draw books. Always greatly appreciative of anyone who supports me by getting those books, but surely it is time to lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.